While it pains me to start off this video with a bit of bad news, it is my job to inform you of the facts, and the fact is the Hyundai Kona Electric here will no longer qualify for the former $7,500 federal EV tax credit, and that's due to changes implemented by the new Inflation Reduction Act. While this legislation does encourage economic growth and development here at home, it does put solid EVs like the Kona at a disadvantage. It's not built here, nor are its batteries, and therefore it just won't qualify for that tax credit. If you're looking for a deeper dive into those changes and how long it'll take for them to go into effect, I highly recommend you go check out Alex's video right here on the channel breaking it all down, or go to alexonautos.com for his very well-researched and very detailed article on the matter. It not only talks about this year's changes, but the changes happening next year and the years beyond, because this is a long-term plan and it's going to affect the EV landscape dramatically. With that $7,500 bolster out of play, buyers interested in something like a Kona EV have more reason now than ever to consider the delta between a base trim level and a more premium one. Also, do remember that this car is still only sold in the select states I have listed on the screen beside me. If you live outside of these states, you're going to have to consider the price and the logistics of getting a Kona Electric all the way back to where you live. Which ultimately begs the question, does the limited trim of the Kona Electric prove to be worth $8,500 more than the base trim? And further, is the Kona Electric good enough that you should have it shipped to you from out of state? Let's find out. So right here, I do have a Kona Electric limited trim. This one's in the black exterior with the gray interior. You can get 5 other exterior color choices. One of them is $400. Otherwise, the only other interior color is black. Let's see how much Hyundai gives you for all that dough. Leather seats that are heated and ventilated. Front seats that at 5'9" give me plenty of headroom and feel actually a little bit more comfortable than those in the Ioniq 5, and have 8-way power adjustability on the driver's side, 6-way manual adjustability on the passenger side, including height adjustment. A heated steering wheel, adaptive cruise control, a standard size moonroof with a manual shade, a Qi wireless charge pad that can barely fit my Google Pixel 6 Pro, and an upgraded Harman Kardon audio system. Now compare that to the roughly $35,000 SEL trim level and you'll get cloth seats on the inside that are neither heated nor ventilated, no sunroof, no upgraded audio, no adaptive cruise control. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are wireless, but they're on a smaller screen. On the outside, a two-tone paint job, so you got a black roof instead of the monotone look you get on the limited trim. The same 10.25-inch configurable LCD instrument cluster with 4 different themes. The same rear cross traffic alert and forward collision warning. The same lane keeping assist and lane following assist. The same 7.2 kilowatt onboard AC charger. The same front axle electric motor producing a peppy 201 horsepower, 291 pound-feet of torque with power sourced from a 64 kilowatt hour battery, and still no frunk. The same 19.2 cubic feet of space behind the second row and 45.8 behind the first row. And the same 17-inch alloy wheels with 215/55 next and low rolling resistance tires. Tires that honestly make it a little difficult to manage all that torque. As you can see, there's going to be a lot of wheel slipping when you push the throttle pretty hard, because these low rolling resistance tires simply cannot handle the amount of torque you get right away when you jab the throttle. And because it's all going to the front wheels, you do get a little bit of torque steer. It's not too bad. It's really just the tire slippage. So if you do buy one of these, maybe consider switching out for some grippier tires. That will definitely affect range and efficiency, but it could be worth it. Now, speaking of efficiency, this is one of the more efficient EVs I've driven. This has been hovering around 4 miles per kilowatt hour throughout my week with the car, and it was already averaging higher than that from the accumulated data. So this is a very efficient EV, but if you're considering this car and you want to take road trips frequently, that is where the slower charging speeds and the lower range is going to come into effect. Yes, the Ioniq 5 I had about the same amount of range as this, but you could charge it almost twice as fast at its peak than you can with this car. So if you're going to be stopping a lot on road trips and you're worried about what kind of stations you're going to be able to find on your road trip, this might not be the best car for you, because frankly you'll just be spending more time at the charging stations. Now, you'll be able to find charging stations for this car easier than the Ioniq 5 if you want to look for, you know, just a regular DC fast charging station that can do 150 kilowatts. This only peaks at 100, so you should be able to find those a lot easier. Braking is another area that is severely affected by these tires and just the overall weight of the car. This is a high 3,800 pound vehicle, but it's a very small compact car with a shorter wheelbase. So with those tires and with that combination of attributes, the stopping distance is quite abysmal. 130 to 140 feet. That is larger SUV territory for sure. In terms of ride quality, this is a super smooth electric car-like ride. It's very similar to the Ioniq 5, and handling is also super impressive. If you had grippier tires, you honestly could probably start to call this a hot hatch, because that's essentially what it is already. The tires would really help. Now, one thing that I noticed that's a little bit better about this car and how it behaves compared to the Ioniq 5 is actually the steering feel. Being electrically assisted, this steering column is doing actually a pretty good job at feeling more engaging and a little bit heavier than what you'll find in the Ioniq 5. That car definitely felt more minivan-like in how it steered. This is definitely a more composed ride than what you get in the regular Kona, but the regular Kona wasn't bad to begin with. Just the fact that we have the lower batteries in here and the heavier weight down low, this definitely just feels like it's, I don't know, it's just carrying its weight a little bit better. I'm not feeling too much body roll here in the corners or the curve or the roundabout, if you will. It's honestly an easy and fun car to toss around town. I did not have the pleasure of driving the pre-refresh Kona Electric, but due to the extra sound deadening materials and whatever else they did, there is actually a quieter cabin for 2022 in here. Now, I don't think this is the quietest cabin, so I can't really imagine how much louder the older one was, but for the most part, this is going to still remind people of what an EV is. It has the same EV-like sounds, the angel noises that it makes on the outside, and just the electric motor whine. I mean, you're going to hear all of that at some points in time, but at the end of the day, the wind noise is not that bad, and that's one area you would normally hear more of because of the lack of sound everywhere else. But I have to say the Kona keeps it all pretty well balanced. And the great thing is, because we have the same tires and wheels on this model as the base model, the experience you get behind the wheel in this is going to be pretty much identical to that car. So quick recap on the Kona Electric. It has a near luxury car-like ride quality thanks to the electric motors and the batteries keeping the center of gravity low and those soft tires. It also has a peppy propulsion system. The electric motor up front is super torquey and it gives you all the power you'll ever really need. It's also one of the most efficient EVs on the market today. I averaged around 4 miles per kilowatt hour. That's definitely near the top of the range for all electric cars available today. And the interior is plug and play. You get your Android Auto or Apple CarPlay set up, all the buttons you need for all the controls are right there. It's very simple to use, not complex whatsoever, a breath of fresh air when it comes to modern electric cars. But the problem is, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are not available on the limited trim, and the EV specs themselves are not exactly class-leading in 2022. You can do better for about the same money or less over at General Motors. And then the elephant in the room, the price in general for that limited trim. If I were you, I would actually stick with the SEL trim. That is what I have concluded after driving the car. You can get some features from the limited trim, including 8-way heated power seats up front, the sunroof, the Qi wireless charge pad, and the battery warmer. And that brings me to the competition. On the screen, we've got the Chevy Bolt EV, the Chevy Bolt EUV, and the new Kia Niro EV. The Chevy Bolt EV is the oldest car in this list, but it's the cheapest too. Chevy just dropped the price significantly. To get into a 1LT trim level, that costs $26,595. You can fully load a 2LT trim level for $31,555, and you're going to get slightly better range than the Kona, slightly better performance than the Kona, but you're still missing all-wheel drive. So if you want dual motor setup, you're still going to have to go with something more expensive, and none of the options on this list are going to provide that. Then there's the Bolt EUV, the newer and slightly larger version of the Bolt EV. It's still priced very competitively, starting at $28,195 for an LT trim. You can fully load the new Premier Redline trim for $37,885. That price still undercuts the Kona Electric when similarly equipped, but it also gives you GM's Super Cruise. Now, it's the first generation of Super Cruise, but it's still a hands-free driving assistant nonetheless, something that the Kona Electric does not offer at all. The Bolt EUV also has a larger cargo area, but slightly less electric range. And finally, we have the Kia version of the Kona Electric, the Kia Niro EV. It was just fully redesigned for 2023 and now has a much more modern and sharp exterior design and a much more modern interior with just a better look and feel, better features. Overall, the ambiance is modern and fresh. But you're going to pay a price for it. It starts at $40,745 for a Wind trim level and goes all the way up to $47,695 for the Wave trim level. And now to finally address the question I asked at the top of the video, do I think that the Kona Electric is worth buying and having shipped from a state that it's available in to the state where you currently live? Is it worth all of that hassle? No. And here's why. There's an Ioniq 5 problem. For just about $2,000 more than the Kona Electric Limited, you can get an SE trim of the Ioniq 5 with 303 miles of range, rear-wheel drive instead of front-wheel drive, 225 horsepower instead of 201, a much more modern and fresh interior, and access to the Ioniq 5's 800-volt charging architecture, which in my charging experience peaked at around 228 kilowatts at DC fast charging stations. That's more than double than what you'll get out of the Kona Electric. That's why I think I would just go with the Ioniq 5 at that price point. But if you want to save money, spend less than $40,000, the SEL trim is my pick for Kona Electric shoppers. Let me know what you guys think about all that in the comments section below. Do you like the Kona Electric enough that you would just go ahead and spring for that limited trim to get all the bells and whistles? Or do you think the Ioniq 5 proves to be a better value proposition for the same price or just a little bit more? Make sure to head over to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Follow us there for all the social media content, as well as the Alex on Autos channel right here on YouTube if you like the traditional internal combustion engine content. If you want to check out the Auto Buyer's Guide podcast, that is also right here on YouTube as Auto Buyer's Guide podcast. And if you want the written reviews, go to alexonautos.com. Until next time, thanks for watching.